Story 1. The call reached me at 4:30 in the afternoon. I had just finished the incident report for a shoplifting case involving a local teenager trying to steal a case of beer. Small-town police work rarely matches movie portrayals. Most days, I felt more like a babysitter for grown adults who lacked public decency. My name is Eli Garrison, and I've served as a cop in Eagle Point, Utah, since 2009. Tucked away in the high desert, Eagle Point is surrounded by canyons, cliffs, and vast open spaces where you could disappear forever. It's the kind of town where everyone knows everyone's business, except for the recluses living off-grid, far from prying eyes. Those folks always seem to have the right idea. The call was unusual, to say the least. A hiker had stumbled upon something she described as wrong about 3 miles into the Iron Ridge Trail. Dispatch relayed that the woman sounded panicked, barely coherent, repeating that she'd found a body. By the time she reached her car to call us, she was too shaken for details. I grabbed my gear and called my partner, Officer Luke Merrill, to meet at the trailhead. Luke and I have worked together for years. He's easygoing, the type who cracks jokes even in chaos. If you needed a steady hand in a crisis, Luke was your guy. We drove to Iron Ridge in my cruiser, the late afternoon sun baking the sagebrush and red dirt. The trailhead was deserted except for an old Subaru Outback. The hiker had left a note on the windshield. Could not wait. Please call me, with her number scribbled underneath. Luke took down her info while I unloaded supplies. We were about 3 hours from sundown, so we needed to move fast. The Iron Ridge Trail isn't for beginners. It winds through rocky terrain with steep inclines and narrow passes overlooking sheer drops into the canyon below. Beautiful, sure, but unforgiving. I've seen more twisted ankles and heatstroke cases on this trail than I can count. We hiked in silence for the first mile, boots crunching on gravel. About 2 miles in, the smell hit us. Luke wrinkled his nose. That is not wildlife. I nodded. We'd both been around enough decomposing bodies to recognize the scent. It's something you never really forget, no matter how long you've been on the job. We picked up the pace, following the stench until we reached a clearing. At first, I thought it was a large animal carcass sprawled on the dirt. As we got closer, the shape became disturbingly human. The body was unrecognizable, face mutilated, chest caved in as if stomped repeatedly. Deep gashes crossed the torso, the kind seen in a mauling. I pulled out my radio to call it in, but Luke pointed to something a few feet away. Another body, smaller, maybe a teenager, bearing the same brutal injuries. The clearing resembled a slaughterhouse, blood splattered across rocks and shrubs. Drag marks led away from the scene toward a thicket of juniper trees. We drew our weapons and followed the trail. I wasn't sure what we faced, but this was no ordinary wildlife attack. The spacing of the drag marks suggested something had hauled these bodies with ease, and whatever it was had claws. The gouges in the dirt were unmistakable. The juniper thicket was dense, branches twisting like skeletal fingers. The decay smell was stronger here, almost choking. We moved cautiously, scanning every shadow, every rustle of leaves. Then we heard it, a sound I can only describe as wet tearing, like ripping apart a soaked towel. Luke gestured for me to circle around while he advanced straight ahead. My heart pounded as I stepped carefully through the brush, weapon ready. The sound grew louder, more frantic. Then I saw it, hunched over a carcass, its back to me. The thing was massive, easily over 7 feet tall, covered in matted fur. Its limbs were too long, too thin, ending in clawed hands stained red. The smell was overwhelming, rot and wet animal. For a moment, I froze, processing what I was seeing. Luke stepped on a branch. The thing whipped around. Its face, if you could call it that, was elongated, almost canine but distorted. The jaw was too wide, filled with jagged, bone-like teeth. It let out a sound, not a growl or roar, but a snarl-scream hybrid. Then it lunged. I fired 3 shots to the chest. Luke fired 2, emptying his magazine as the thing closed the distance. It barely flinched. It swiped at Luke, knocking him into the brush. I kept firing, aiming for its head, its legs, anything to slow it down. 1 shot caught its knee. It staggered, giving me time to grab Luke and haul him up. We ran. Adrenaline surged through me as we crashed through the thicket, branches tearing at our clothes. The thing pursued, crashing through brush like a freight train. I could hear it gaining, its breath ragged and furious. We burst onto the trail and kept running, lungs burning, legs screaming. Ahead, I saw the trailhead and our cruiser. Luke stumbled, nearly falling, but I yanked him upright and shoved him forward. The thing was close now. I could feel the ground shaking. I turned and fired again, emptying my magazine. It slowed just enough for us to dive into the car and slam the doors. Luke fumbled for the keys, started the engine as the thing slammed into the cruiser, denting the door. It clawed at the windows, leaving deep scratches. I grabbed the shotgun from the rack and fired through the windshield. The creature recoiled, momentarily stunned. Luke hit the gas. We tore out, tires kicking up gravel. In the rearview mirror, I saw it standing in the road, head tilted slightly, as if memorizing our retreat. Then it turned and loped back into the woods, disappearing into the shadows. Back at the station, we tried to piece it together. The bodies were recovered the next morning, but the creature was gone. Officially, the deaths were attributed to a bear attack, an explanation that didn't sit well with me or Luke. The wounds were too precise, too deliberate. Bears don't leave claw marks that look like they were made by hands. Weeks later, hikers went missing near Iron Ridge. Their bodies were never found, but search teams reported strange tracks, like a large dog's, but with an extra set of digits. The area was eventually closed to the public, deemed too dangerous. Luke transferred soon after, citing family reasons, but I knew better. As for me, I stayed in Eagle Point. Someone has to keep an eye on Iron Ridge, just in case. The creature's features matched old accounts of the Rougarou, a werewolf-like figure from Cajun folklore. I'm not one for legends, but after that day, I started keeping silver bullets in my locker. You know, just in case. Story 2. It was 1987, and Wyoming's red desert felt like another planet. The landscape was an endless sprawl of cracked earth, low sagebrush, and wind-carved rock formations. The air was dry enough to crack my lips within an hour of being out there. My name is Rory Hastings. At the time, I'd been working under the table for a nameless government agency, the kind of job that came with a 2-sentence contract and a firm, "We own you now" handshake. You don't choose this line of work. My background was hunting, tracking dangerous things that might kill you before you kill them. That's why they found me. I'd made a name with a case involving a rogue alligator the size of a boat. An agency guy showed up at my door with a cigar and a duffel bag of cash, saying he needed predator experts. I asked too few questions, and there I was, in the middle of nowhere, waiting for backup that never came. The brief was vague. Reports of something attacking livestock. Ranchers described animals ripped apart in ways no wolf or cougar could manage. When I pressed for details, the guy muttered about teeth marks too wide and deep for any known predator. A classification anomaly. Cryptid hunters speak, for we have no goddamn clue what this is. I parked my truck beside a dry creek bed. The air hung heavy with an unnerving silence. No insects, no coyotes, just wind and occasional tumbleweeds. My gear was light: a .308 rifle, a sidearm, and a thigh-strap knife. Most cryptids, if that's what they were, bled like anything else. I'd just finished setting up camp when I noticed the tracks. Not fresh, but deep, for claws splayed like a giant bird's. Except no bird I knew left 3-inch deep indentations. The stride was long too, 6 feet between prints. I radioed HQ, but the signal was patchy. I'd be on my own until morning. Around midnight, things got strange. My campfire's light didn't reach as far as it should. The darkness felt heavy, oppressive. Then came the sound, a deep thrumming, like a cello string magnified 100 times, coming from the east near the creek bed. I grabbed my rifle and flashlight and headed toward the sound, boots crunching gravel. The first thing I saw was blood, a wide streak painting the rocks and dirt, fresh enough to glisten under my beam. Something had been dragged. I followed the trail 30 yards before finding what was left of a mule deer. Its torso was missing entirely, bitten clean in half. Exposed ribs looked chewed, not snapped. The remaining flesh was shredded with precision. That was apex predator butchery. I'd faced dangerous animals, feral hogs, mountain lions, even an escaped tiger, but none felt like this. My stomach tightened as I swung the beam across the dirt. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a boulder. Then it moved. The creature, calling it that feels too kind, was squatting in the creek bed, back to me. It had the hunched frame of a grizzly bear, but the legs were wrong. Too long, bent backward like a bird's. Its arms were thick, claws glinting wet with blood. Its head was the worst, elongated, almost reptilian, with quills running down its neck and spine. It reminded me of a Komodo dragon, but bull-sized. I don't know if it heard or smelled me, but it turned, slow and deliberate. The face wasn't reptilian after all. It had patches of thin, scraggly fur, but the underlying structure was all wrong. Jaws too wide, teeth jagged and uneven. A cougar's teeth sliced precisely. These were crude, made for tearing and crushing indiscriminately. I aimed the rifle, but it moved faster than I could track. One moment it was 20 feet away, the next nearly on me. I fired a shot that went wide. Something slammed into my chest. I hit the ground hard, ribs screaming. Adrenaline kicked in, dulling the pain. I scrambled backward, fumbling for my sidearm. The creature didn't lunge again. It stood over me, staring. I felt its breath, hot, rank, like rotting meat and ammonia. My fingers found the pistol grip. I emptied the clip into its torso. Shots rang out, but the creature barely flinched. Blood seeped dark and sluggish, but it didn't care. Instead, it tilted its head, almost curious. Then it swiped. Claws caught my leg. Pain shot through me like lightning. It wasn't a clean cut. Jagged gashes oozed blood. I kicked with my good leg, rolled, grabbed the rifle. The next shot hit its shoulder. This time it roared, a guttural, bone-shaking cry. It backed off, retreating into shadows. I scrambled to my feet, limping back to camp, blood soaking my boot. The first aid kit was a joke, bandages and antiseptic. I tied a makeshift tourniquet and radioed again, but static was deafening. The response team wouldn't arrive until morning, if at all. I was on my own. Hours crawled by, each heavier than the last. I stayed awake, rifle in hand, listening for its return. The fire died around 4 a.m., leaving me in complete darkness. That's when I heard it again, the thrumming, closer. I didn't wait. I grabbed a flare, lit it. Red glow cast dancing shadows. The creature stood at the edge of the light, form grotesque in the flickering hue. It wasn't alone. Two smaller versions flanked it, movements jittery, cubs, maybe. The realization made my stomach drop. I threw the flare at the large one. It recoiled, hissing as light hit its face. The smaller ones scattered. I fired another shot, aiming for its head. The bullet hit its jaw. Something cracked. It screamed a high-pitched wail and fell. The smaller ones didn't return. When the sun rose, I saw the aftermath. The creature's body was there, massive, grotesque in daylight, blood thick and black pooling beneath it. The jaw hung loose, shattered. I approached cautiously, rifle trained, but it didn't move. The response team arrived an hour later. They didn't ask questions. They loaded the body into an unmarked truck and handed me whiskey before disappearing. I asked about the smaller ones, but they said nothing. They didn't need to. I knew they were still out there. A week later, a new brief arrived. Thin, just a location and priority 1. No explanation. I didn't need it. Whatever I'd killed wasn't the only one. Now it was my job to clean up the mess. Story 3. My name is Conrad Whitaker. This happened in 2016 while stationed at a fire lookout tower near White River National Forest, Colorado. I took the job to escape city noise, personal baggage, and to finish that novel I kept lying about. Instead, I got horror book material. The tower perched on a rocky outcrop overlooking a sea of pines, jagged peaks, and narrow valleys. My cabin sat adjacent, modest but equipped. The radio crackled every morning during check-ins. The rest of the day was mine to watch for smoke. The isolation was therapeutic until it became something else. The first weeks were uneventful. The quiet unnerved me at first, but I grew to appreciate it. I'd sit on the deck with binoculars, occasionally spotting hikers who'd wave if they saw me. Nights were for reading, writing, and dismissing forest creaks as wind. One afternoon, a month in, I spotted something odd. Thin smoke curling from dense trees east of my position, subtle, not wildfire-like. Binoculars revealed it near an old, disused trail warned about during orientation. The ranger hinted it was closed due to people who don't like being found. I called it in. The station acknowledged, saying they'd check tomorrow. Their nonchalance felt off. The smoke looked too steady, too deliberate. That night, as the sun dipped, the forest transformed into a dark labyrinth. Wind howled. Every tower creak sounded like footsteps. I told myself to stop being ridiculous. Around midnight, I heard a faint knock. My blood ran cold. No one came up here, especially not at this hour. I froze, listening. The knock came again, louder. "Who is it?" I called, voice unsteady. No response. I grabbed a flashlight and wrench, approached the door. When I opened it, no one was there. I swept the beam across the area. Nothing but trees and rustling leaves. Probably an animal, I muttered, unconvinced. I bolted the door and stayed awake, jumping at every noise. The next day, I hiked to the smoke spot. The trail was overgrown. The smoke was gone, but charred ground and hastily buried ash piles remained. Small wooden carvings hung from trees, crude figures with distorted limbs and faces. The air smelled acidic, burnt wood, and something metallic. I heard a crack behind me. A man stood 20 feet away, partially hidden by a tree, tall, wiry, gaunt-faced with a scruffy beard, clothes filthy, patched with scraps. He stared, unblinking. "Hello," I said, raising a hand non-threateningly. "Are you lost?" He tilted his head, bird-like, then disappeared. The silence was deafening. I approached where he'd stood, and found a rusted machete embedded in a tree trunk. Bark around it was stained dark. Blood, I guessed. I hightailed it back, glancing over my shoulder. The forest seemed to close in. By the time I reached the tower, I was drenched in sweat. That night, I couldn't sleep. His hollow gaze haunted me. I kept lights on, wrench by my side. Around 2 a.m., movement near the tower base, a figure pacing, occasionally looking up. It was him. I grabbed the radio, called the station. Static. I tried again, shouting. No response. Panic set in. I was alone. The man began climbing. My heart pounded as I locked the trap door. I heard him ascending, each ladder creak driving me toward insanity. He reached the trap door, pounded. The sound reverberated. Get out of here, I shouted, brandishing the wrench. I'll call the cops. A pause, then laughter, low, guttural. Shivers ran down my spine. The pounding stopped. Silence. I waited, knuckles white on the wrench. He didn't return. The ladder was empty, swaying slightly. I spent the night barricaded. The next morning, I discovered a trail of blood leading into the woods. Following it reluctantly, I found a hiker's body, throat slashed, belongings scattered. I called it in, voice trembling. This time, the station responded quickly. Rangers and police arrived. I told them everything. The smoke, carvings, man body. They searched but found no trace of him or the machete. Rangers seemed uneasy, exchanging glances. One pulled me aside. This isn't the first time. Be careful. They took the body, promised updates. But I never heard back. The rest of my assignment passed in paranoid haze. Doors locked, I avoided venturing far. Shadows flickered in the woods. When my contract ended, I left without looking back. Months later, I found reports of missing persons dating back decades. Suspect descriptions varied, but one detail was consistent: a gaunt man with a machete. His motivations? Maybe a hermit defending territory or enjoying the hunt. I'm just glad I made it out alive. His name? Unknown, but old-timers called him the Phantom of White River. Story 4. My name is Quentin Hargrave. This happened in 2015 while living off-grid near the Kenai Peninsula, Alaska. I'd spent 3 years in those woods, fishing, trapping, escaping modern noise and past mistakes. The Kenai Peninsula tricks you with pristine wilderness, snow-covered peaks, spruce forests, biting rivers, but shadows linger. Old logging camps, gold rush cabins, people disappearing for sinister reasons. I built a small cabin near a creek, 8 miles from a town, a gas station, bar, post office cluster. Monthly supply runs broke my rhythm. Hunt, forage, chop wood, repeat. Simple. That morning, I planned to hike to high ground to check game cameras for caribou or bears. Standard kit, Winchester rifle, hunting knife. In hindsight, I wish I'd been better prepared. The hike took an hour, uneventful until I reached the ridge. The first camera hung by its strap, swinging, casing scratched and dented. Bears. But no bait smell. I unhooked it, opened the casing, the SD card was gone. Bears mess with cameras. They don't steal memory cards. People do. I scanned trees and undergrowth, but I never heard back. The rest of my assignment passed in paranoid haze. Doors locked, I avoided venturing far. Shadows flickered in the woods. When my contract ended, I left teenagers messing with the hermit, but it felt wrong, deliberate, malicious. I cut the hike short. Retracing steps, I found a fresh boot print in mud, size 11, tread different from mine. Someone else had been here recently. I froze, studied it. The forest closed in, shadows deepened. I quickened pace. Back at the cabin, sun dipping, temperature dropping. Opening the door, I stopped cold. Ransacked. Table overturned, shelves emptied, supplies scattered. Flour bag slashed, contents spilled. Hunting gear, spare rifle, ammo, knives gone. This wasn't a bear, it was calculated. Turning to scan the perimeter, movement caught my eye. A figure darting between trees 50 yards away. "Hey," I shouted, raising my rifle. He stopped. Tall, lanky, tattered coat, jeans, gaunt, skeletal face, unchecked scruffy beard. Stared unblinking, then vanished. I didn't follow. Chasing into dusk was foolish. Instead, I locked up, barricaded with a chair, kept rifle ready. Barely slept. Every creak amplified. Next morning, I went to town to report. The 8-mile hike felt longer, every sound magnified. At the gas station, locals buzzed. Marty, the wiry owner, face grim. "Quentin, hear about what happened." I shook my head. Folks found a campsite up by Deep Creek. Tents slashed, blood everywhere. Troopers are looking. Deep Creek was 5 miles from my cabin. Teenagers messing with the hermit? But it felt wrong, deliberate, malicious. I cut the hike short. Retracing steps, I found a fresh boot print in mud, size 11, tread different from mine. Someone else had been here recently. I froze, studied it. The forest closed in, shadows deepened. I quickened pace. Back at the cabin, sun dipping, temperature dropping. Opening the door, I stopped cold. Back at the cabin, the door was open. I'd locked it. Stomach dropped. Inside, worse. Mattress slashed. Curtains torn. Something carved above the fireplace. Leave. I grabbed my backpack, stuffed salvageable items. Footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate, circling. "I'm armed," I shouted. "Get out." Footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a raspy voice. "You think you can hide from the world up here? The world finds you." I swung rifle toward sound. "Show yourself." The voice laughed, dry, humorless, then faded. I didn't wait. Grabbed pack, bolted for town trail. Halfway, a branch cracked behind. I spun, trail empty. Started running, boots pounding dirt, breath ragged. Forest alive with movement, shadows flickering. Pushed harder. Reached town edge, collapsed on gas station steps. Marty saw me, called troopers. They arrived within the hour. Trail cold. Next day, they found my cabin burned to the ground. Among ashes, half-melted hunting knife, charred human bones, later ID'd as a missing Anchorage hiker. Peter Caro never caught. Another campsite found weeks later, more blood, no bodies. His name faded from headlines, not memory. I never went back. Some places are better left alone. Story 5. My name is Leland Durant. In 2016, I took my RV to the Blue Ridge Mountains, Virginia, for a break. Hiking, grilling, cheap beer, vistas. Saved for months after divorce and grinding job. Classic, find yourself, retreat. Found more than bargained for. Campsite, 10 miles off main highway. Tucked in woods near forgotten trail. World shrunk away. No cell, no crowds. RV parked at clearing edge. Oaks and pines casting long shadows. Second day, hike unmarked trail, weathered sign. Overgrown path, old carvings in trees, initials, dates, symbols. Felt like stepping back in time. 3 miles in, crude campsite, ragged tarp, fire pit with charred bones, rusted cans. Air faintly decayed. Shrugged off, people camp rough, but felt off. Trail looped back. Relieved to see RV at dusk. Grilled burgers. Couldn't shake campsite image. Bones too big for rabbits, too small for deer. Laughed off imagination. Midnight, tapping against RV side. Not knock, Deliberate tapping, rhythmic. Froze. Grabbed flashlight, slid out. Tapping stopped. Swept beam, nothing. Locked doors, told myself tree branch. Unease lingered. Next day, stick close. Folding chair, book. Every noise snapped head up. Midday, pile of rocks near clearing edge. Neat pyramid. Not there yesterday. Took photo, kick pile over. Determined not to ruin trip. That night, tapping returned. Louder, moving around RV. Stayed in bed, clutching multi-tool. Stopped after minutes. Third day, ready to leave. Packing gear morning. Chair folded. Another rock pile on RV hood. Swept rocks off, climbed in. Engine wouldn't start. Coughed, sputtered. Battery, fuel lines fine. Panic, stranded, town 10 miles away. Footsteps outside, slow, deliberate, circling. Laughter, high-pitched, childlike, sharp, cruel. Spun around. Saw movement, pale skin flash, metallic glint. Reached clearing, collapsed, gasping. Saw him. Man at clearing edge, half-shadowed. Tall, gaunt, stringy hair, sun-starved face. Tattered clothes hung off frame. Rusted machete in hand. Froze. He stepped forward. What do you want? Voice steady. Another step. Backed away. Heart pounded. Turned. Ran. Crashing through underbrush. Laughter louder. Closer. Tripped. Sprawling. Hands hit sharp. Pile of bones. Human. Scattered. Half buried. Stomach churned. Scrambled up. Footsteps approached. Man emerged. Machete gleaming. Raised it. Braced for worst. Noise cut air. Low guttural growl. Not him. Man froze. Eyes darting, afraid. Without word, disappeared. Left with bones, growling, echoing. Ran, fueled by adrenaline. Stumbled onto highway. Trucker picked me up, pale-faced at story. Called authorities. Found RV next day. No sign of man or what scared him. Sheriff dismissed, deranged squatter. Found more campsites. Bones, some human, some not. Men never caught. Case open. Haven't been back. Wonder about man and noise that scared him. What lurked? Why let me go? Some questions better unanswered.